love. It's coming from logic.
But
I don't make argumentations based on my emotions.
But Christ's law is in love. I mean, is man for law or is law for man?
You say she had a ministry?
Of women.
Yeah, are women allowed to have ministries?
That's what you say, but I don't agree with that.
Right, you don't agree with that. You're preaching a false doctrine.
Women want to turn away from or turn away from like what they've been doing, and you are like berating them, you're criticizing them, you're making it like you're embarrassing them and making it hard for other women who are maybe viewing this to turn their own ways. And to me, that's
great, but I need you to understand that I don't give a shit how it makes you feel. What I care about is what is logically true and consistent, and what I care about is the argument. A lot of women who utilize Christianity and the faith of Christianity to hide behind, and they become reformed not because they have found Christ at all, but because they use Christianity as a shield from criticism.
Look, I don't care what side you're on politically. When someone comes at Andrew Wilson thinking they've got him cornered with the whole "you're too mean to born-again women" angle, you already know where this is going. And what's absolutely hilarious is watching people who clearly don't understand his worldview try to pin him down on tone instead of actually engaging with his arguments. This girl starts off trying to gotcha him about being harsh on reformed women. And dude, Andrew doesn't even blink. He just methodically dismantles every single emotional appeal she throws at him. Pay attention to how he handles this, because this is a masterclass in not taking the bait. You're watching someone who knows exactly what game is being played here, and he's not playing it. Let's get into it.
Well, I think Andrew Wilson is a very smart man, and I enjoy listening to his debates. One bone to pick with him is his treatment of women who are born again. In my experience, it sort of seems like you are extra harsh on them, and what I would think is that if you wanted the world to be less degenerate, that you would sort of welcome people wanting to change their ways. So I'm just curious what your motive is in being so harsh, and I'd love to hear about it.
Andrew, before you answer, can you just, for the panel and then for the viewers,
for your OCD, yes, right here, I'm framed up.
No, that's not. Can you just give a rundown? So your denomination of Christianity?
Yeah, I'm a Eastern Orthodox Christian. I'm not a Protestant. I'm happy to get into this though, right? Because I think that that's a seemingly fair criticism on its face. But as you've seen from, can we agree on a couple of things first though? You've seen from tonight's panel, I basically only give out the same energy that I get. Is that a fair thing to say?
You'd have to elaborate on that more.
Meaning, unless you're being particularly hostile towards me, I'm not particularly hostile towards you.
I don't actually agree with that. I mean,
have I been particularly hostile with you?
Not with me, but I think that you. I've noticed you being particularly hostile to this woman, and I've noticed you being particularly hostile. How
was I hostile with her? I thought that we had a good back and forth engagement.
I think that once you make your point, you keep going.
Hang on. Let me finish. I treat her exactly how I would treat any man who was sitting where she was, who had a contrary opinion to my own.
Sure.
Did I treat her differently than that?
No.
Okay, so then by your logic then, it's not just born again women who I would be brutal with in a debate, but also men, correct?
True.
Yeah, so I'm just going to treat both exactly the same.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so go ahead with the rest of your criticism. Just want to make sure we get this squared out.
What I'm curious about is your intention when you come on and you, like, what is wrong with a woman deciding that what she was doing was wrong and she wants to change her ways? I haven't heard it on this panel tonight, but in a lot of the whatever podcasts, that's what I hear. Like, there were a couple girls sitting here, and I don't know what's wrong with them deciding that they don't want to do what they're doing anymore. And I don't know what kind of resume you have to have for you to not mock them.
Nothing's wrong with that.
Then why are you still mocking them?
Well, okay, so I need you to try to separate two different things going on.
Okay.
So I believe that culture is downwind of theology and politics is downwind of culture. So I think that politics is informed by the culture and the culture is informed by theology. So imagine, to my chagrin, if you have women who will take Christianity and up and twist it all up and mess it all up in order to appeal to other women and give them incorrect theology, and then preach that incorrect theology. And so we end up tangling in a theological debate where they say all sorts of crazy shit, like this, for instance. Yes, it's okay if you play with tarot cards and you're a Christian. Or alternatively, yes, it's okay to be a magic user and a Christian. Or alternatively, yes, there's no, you were a prostitute, but that's very similar to people smoking cigarettes. You can imagine my chagrin hearing that from these women, because it seems like they're trying to placate other women into bringing them into a false faith, which I think apostatizing is worse than anything else. So I think coming into false Christianity is almost as bad as the degeneracy itself.
Okay, that's a great answer. What I would say back to you is that the way that you argue, it doesn't seem like you have a lot of love. It doesn't seem like it's coming from love. Like, there was one woman...
Not coming from love. It's coming from logic.
But
I don't make argumentations
But Christ's
based on
law
my
is
emotions.
in love. I mean, is man for law or is law for man? There was one woman who was here, and she turned around. Will you let me finish, please? She turned around and said that she didn't want to do her old ways anymore. She had already come so far. She had a husband. She had a ministry. And you were on here, like, getting on her about
Did you say she
law.
had a ministry?
Yeah, and that's what you were getting on her about.
Be sure I'm clear.
That's what you were getting on her about.
Hang on, stop. My turn now. Did you say she had a ministry?
Of women.
Yeah, are women allowed to have ministries?
That's what you say, but I don't agree with that.
Right, you don't agree with that. You're preaching a false doctrine. You want women to be clergy. You want women to lead women inside of a. Hang on, let me finish. Inside of a patriarchal. Okay, you tell me when I'm allowed to respond to your points. Go ahead.
Okay. I think that when you preach out of this, like, intent to mock women, I mean...
Okay, so here's the thing about this whole interaction that I need you to understand. Andrew Wilson absolutely destroyed this argument, and I'm going to tell you exactly why. First off, she comes in with, "You're too harsh on born-again women," which is just tone policing from the jump. Like, that's not an argument. That's an emotional appeal. And Andrew calls it out immediately. He literally asks her, "Do I treat born-again women differently than I treat men who disagree with me?" And she has to admit, no. So right there, the entire premise collapses. He's not targeting women. He's targeting bad theology, period. But here's where it gets really interesting. She keeps trying to make it about feelings. It doesn't seem like it's coming from love, and Andrew just shuts that down cold. It's not coming from love. It's coming from logic. Dude, that response is perfect, because what she's doing, and what so many people do when they can't win on substance, is they try to make you defend your tone instead of your argument, and he refuses to play that game. Now let me explain what Andrew's actually saying here, because this is important. He's not saying women can't repent. He's not saying born-again Christians should be attacked. What he's saying is that when women take Christianity and twist it to accommodate degeneracy, like saying you can be a Christian and read tarot cards, or saying being a prostitute is like smoking cigarettes, that's not reformation. That's false doctrine being sold to other women to make them feel better about not actually changing. And this is the part that I know you guys already understand, but needs to be said out loud. There are absolutely grifters on the right who use the "I found Christ" thing as a shield from criticism. Like, you see it all the time. OnlyFans girl suddenly gets baptized, starts a podcast about traditional values, sells courses to women about femininity, and the second you point out the inconsistency, you're told you're being uncharitable or unforgiving. No, That's not how any of this works. Andrew's point about women having ministries is actually huge here. In Eastern Orthodox Christianity, which is what he practices, women are not clergy. That's not misogyny, that's theology. And when she says, "I don't agree with that," Andrew immediately calls it what it is: false doctrine. She wants to bend Christianity to fit modern sensibilities instead of submitting to what the faith actually teaches. And that's exactly the problem he's identifying. The best part of this whole thing is at the end when he says women use Christianity as a shield from criticism. Like, that is spot on. How many times have you seen someone pull the "I'm reformed now, you can't criticize my past" card while still benefiting from that past? While still having the followers, the platform, the money from when they were doing the exact thing they now claim to have left behind. And the second you point that out, you're told you're being too harsh or not showing grace. Andrew's not buying it, and honestly, neither should you. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about this. Do you think Andrew was too harsh here? Or do you think he's absolutely right that false doctrine is worse than the degeneracy itself? I'd love to hear where you stand on this.
Your base is men. Like, I feel like when you come on these things, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like your intent is to mock women for these comments. And I don't see how that is helping the world be better. I understand what you're saying, that you don't want women with a false doctrine, but at the same time, it just seems like it's not coming from love, that you are like, women want to turn away from or turn away from like what they've been doing, and you are like berating them, you're criticizing them, you're making it like you're embarrassing them and making it hard for other women who are maybe viewing this to turn their own ways. And to me, that's making degeneracy grow. Like, you are enabling this hate women sort of mentality, in my opinion. That's how it comes off to a woman watching the show. It's like you are not able to turn away from what you want to turn from.
Can I add to that? And I don't want to like be judgmental.
No, you can't add to that because we're in the middle of having a conversation, and then you can add to it. So am I allowed to respond to these points now? Now, can you admit that I did not interrupt you at all while you were going through that? Great. So let's go through it one at a time. One, that's just tone policing. You never made a single argument. Why do I want people to come into a false faith? Why do I want that? That's bad. Not only that, but let us assume for a second that you don't know my end of it, how many people reach out to me after these shows who are women who say, "Thank you for challenging my worldview. I never thought of things like that at all." Or "I know I got demolished," or how many hundreds of women send me DMs outside of this show who say it's due to your argumentation, your logical argumentation, that I came over to this. You're making arguments which are appealing to emotion. You're saying emotionally, when I hear what you say, it emotionally makes me feel bad. Well, that's great, but I need you to understand that I don't give a shit how it makes you feel. What I care about is what is logically true and consistent, and what I care about is the arguments. You might say, so for instance, imagine this. You would agree with me that there's going to be a lot more Christians if we include homosexuals into Christianity, right?
I don't know. I wasn't brought up in church. I don't know.
Okay, but you would agree that if you had a church which barred homosexuals and then the church allowed homosexuals in, that you would have a lot more?
Andrew, avoid that topic if you can.
Okay.
Could I respond to what you said?
If it was people of the same sex, if you let more of them in, right, you would agree that you would have a much larger congregation, right? But you can't allow people to defeat what the purpose of the religion is because they choose not to wake up one day and go, "I'm not going to be a prostitute anymore." And then I need you to respond to my last point, and this is the one that I really want you to focus on. There's a lot of women who utilize Christianity and the faith of Christianity to hide behind, and they become reformed not because they have found Christ at all, but because they use Christianity as a shield from criticism. And that, I believe, is where most of the tone policing from women comes from. That you're utilizing tone policing to say, "No, you're not allowed to criticize me now because I've turned away from my degenerate ways." No, that's not the purpose of Christianity either, is that now suddenly you're above criticism. That's not how that works.
All right, so let's wrap this up. Andrew Wilson absolutely dominated this conversation. Like, it wasn't even close. This woman came in thinking she had a legitimate criticism, and within 2 minutes, Andrew had her admitting that he treats everyone the same way, which completely undercut her entire premise. And look, I get why people have an emotional reaction to Andrew's style. He's blunt, he's direct, he doesn't sugarcoat anything. But that's not a flaw. That's the entire point. If you're going to come onto a panel and preach a version of Christianity that accommodates degeneracy, you should be challenged hard, because what you're doing is leading other women into a false faith. And Andrew is right when he says that's worse than the original sin. The moment she said, "I don't see the love," dude, that's when you know the argument is over. Because she's not engaging with what he's saying anymore. She's just trying to make it about tone, and Andrew doesn't fall for it. He says it straight up. I don't give a shit how it makes you feel. I care about what's logically true. And that is exactly the mentality we need more of, not less. Because the culture war isn't won by being nice to people who are peddling lies wrapped in Christian language. It's won by calling it out, exposing it, and refusing to back down when people try to shame you into silence. Andrew Wilson gets it. He understands that false doctrine spreads when good people are too polite to challenge it. And he's not going to be that guy. So if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure you hit that like button, drop a comment below with your thoughts, and subscribe to MB, because this is exactly the kind of content we bring you. Unapologetic, unfiltered, and always on point. Stay sharp. I'll see you in the next one.